Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining us today for Drive Action, Not Notes, your introduction to productive meetings. My name is Mia, and I'm a data science apprentice here at Nightingale HQ. We help businesses to adopt AI, and this webinar series is built around our GoSmarter toolbox. That is 6 tools that will help your business bounce back in this COVID-19 world through introducing automation and AI to a variety of different processes. So like I said, I am the data science apprentice here, and at Nightingale HQ, we make use of Microsoft Teams every single day. So when we talk about that later, a big amount of it will be coming from my own experience using the tool all the time. To get started, we should make sure that this meeting itself is as productive as it can be. So I'm going to make sure that my live captions are switched on. Now, depending on your own settings on Teams, which is how we're delivering this webinar, there are a couple of ways you can turn live captions on. It's either through the 3 dots in the meeting tools at the bottom, or using the settings on the sidebar on the right. You open the settings up here and you switch on your live captions. So while I am speaking, you can not just hear what I'm saying, but you can also read it on the screen. So today we're going to start by talking about automation and AI, 2 terms that I've already used. We'll explain briefly what they are, and mostly in the context of these productive meetings as well. Then we'll talk about why, in this age of remote meetings, productive meetings and collaboration tools are especially important to SMEs. Then we will talk about the different solutions that are available to you to do your video conferencing, your remote meetings, and your online collaboration. Now, so many of us are working remotely. And finally, we will introduce the GoSmarter tool for productive meetings. So what is automation? You've probably heard of automation in some context before, often in terms of AI, robots, and computer-based automation. Well, it doesn't have to be that complicated. Automation is, put simply, a way to use a system to perform a specific task. So you probably have loads of tasks that you do every single day that you barely even need to think about, but are still taking up time in your lives. This does not have to be a task that you perform on a computer. Automation can be as simple, it can be something really simple that does not involve any computational power. As an example, I have a lizard in my house who lives in a vivarium. He needs a light bulb to emulate the sun. Now, without automation, I would switch that light bulb on every morning and switch it off every night. And if I forgot, my lizard would be very uncomfortable. Well, I've automated that process, not even with a smart light bulb. I simply have a ticker timer that I plug the light into. So automation can be very, very simple, but it saved me lots of thinking time and worry about how my lizard is doing. But of course, you can scale it up as well. And in fact, the only real limitation to what you can automate is what you can define as a set of steps. So as long as you have a business process that you can break down into easy to perform steps, you can hand those steps over to a system and automate that process. This makes automation a real garbage in, garbage out kind of system. If you don't define those steps very well, the automation system will not perform the steps very well. So it is important to be able to define them. But once you can, the world is your oyster when it comes to automation. For example, let's talk about productive meetings. If I were to miss a meeting that wasn't recorded in any way, I would have to bother the people that were in that meeting and ask them to repeat themselves. That's introducing repetition into our day, and that reduces our productivity. If, however, you use Microsoft Teams to automatically upload a video of every meeting you have onto Microsoft Stream, then anyone that misses that meeting for whatever reason can go back and watch it. They can even search through the automated transcripts to find things that are especially relevant to them. So immediately everybody is more productive. If you deliver training, you only have to deliver it once, because then the video is available for everyone to watch, and people that miss the training simply need to send you a set of questions that they have after watching that video. And automation isn't just limited to a simple set of steps that is the same every time. It can support business processes that have different possible outcomes. By that, I mean it can incorporate rules that you would in terms of if this, then that. As an example, I have a very simple automation set up on my email that saves me time when it comes to responding to very frequent requests that I get in my business. My business makes products for children, so we often get inquiries, firstly about discounts for home educators, and secondly about influencers who want to collaborate, for example, on Instagram. Now, I have an automation set up that scans my emails for two sets of terms: home education related terms and collaboration on Instagram related terms. If it detects either of those, the system branches and it will create one of two different draft emails in my email, so that when I log in, the correct sort of skeleton of an email is there, ready for me to fill it in and send it to the person that got in touch. So there's lots of ways you can take these automation systems and branch them out to support the many processes we have in our businesses that don't have one single outcome, but different outcomes depending on what happens in each of those steps. And beyond this, and an important part of that email automation I mentioned, is that automation doesn't mean taking all the work away from the people and leaving it to a computer to do, despite the fact that these automation systems can't really think like a person. No, automation can usually include, in all these little predefined steps towards performing a business process, one or more steps that call a human over to make an advanced decision. So often automation acts as a filter for us. We all have a variety of different jobs to do every day. Some of those are repetitive and don't require a lot of thinking. If we filter those away with automation and allow it to spit back the tasks that require what humans are best at, the fuzzy areas where we're not sure if this is this or that, the areas where we need to make an informed decision, what we're doing is giving ourselves more time. And that's what we mean by productive meetings. It's not that we're spending less time in meetings necessarily, but we are using the time in our meetings to get more done. And with automation, we are freed up much more time to focus on the really important tasks. And speaking of the fuzzy areas, the things that require some knowledge lookup, we can also incorporate artificial intelligence into our automation. What do I mean by artificial intelligence AI? Well, AI is a system that performs cognitive tasks, which is exactly what it sounds like. They're the sort of tasks that we would usually assume a human brain is needed to do. Now, there is a whole range of fancy AI systems that we can tap into, a lot of them available through Microsoft, and these perform a whole range of fantastic tasks that come close to some of the things that humans can do. Reasoning, they can, much quicker than humans, scan through huge quantities of data and come to conclusions. They can make predictions. They can understand the world around them, these AI systems. So that's something that we often take for granted, but our brains can process a huge number of flickering images that hit the back of our eye, jumbled sound waves that come in through our ears, and also text, which is maybe written in handwriting or printed, and we can convert that into something that has meaning. Well, there's a bunch of AI systems that can do that as well. And finally, if you look in the realm of FAQ chatbots, which was the subject of our webinar last week, these AI systems can also perform interaction, engaging with people in natural ways. Now, most AI systems can do a small number or one of these tasks very well, and we can introduce them into our automation systems. When it comes to productive meetings, we will be looking a lot at speech processing. This is what is generating these captions at the bottom of the screen right now, along with natural language processing. So together they are taking the jumbled sound waves that come through my microphone and sorting them into sentences that have some form of meaning. Even if occasionally one word might not quite be right, generally we can figure out what those captions mean. We will also look later at Video Indexer, which makes use of computer vision. That is a computer being able to interpret items, people, and brands on in a video or in an image. So there's a lot of different areas of AI that can be harnessed to improve the productivity of our meetings. Now, all of us have been affected in some way by the arrival of the age of remote meetings. Even if we're not able to work remotely because of the nature of the business we do, I'm sure everybody has been involved in some kind of Zoom meetup or quiz or online exercise class, but it's affected the pandemic that's kept many of us at home has led to 56% of UK businesses now working remotely, which is, when you think about it, a huge number of people that possibly for the first time are collaborating online when they're used to being face-to-face in an office together. There are many different tools that are being used, which we will look at later, to collaborate and conference online. But taking Microsoft Teams as an example, they saw a 70% increase in their active daily users just between March and April this year. Their active daily users rose from 32 million to 75 million. And it's no surprise because 73% of us view video as a crucial part of collaboration. So what that means is it's not enough to set up a chat, to set up a conference like phone call. When we are used to working together in an office, we're used to a huge amount of face-to-face time with each other. And actually, if you imagine we spend 8+ hours every single day working, if all of that time is spent without seeing another human face, it becomes very difficult to motivate yourself to sort of get to know your team very well. So this video, it's not just about collaborating on your work, it's about socializing with your team. So it is no surprise that the global video conferencing market is growing at a rapid rate. In 2019, it was worth just under $4 billion, but it's projected to jump up to 50 billion by 2026, which is an enormous jump, and it's very likely that that is fueled by the events of 2020 that have led to so many businesses switching to remote working to protect their staff. So this PC Mag article highlights this Statista graph that shows how many people are making use of video conferencing systems. Now, this was a survey of 18 years and older participants in the United States in March of this year. Now, you can see that still consumer-focused technology is leading. FaceTime, Facebook Messenger, maybe it's being used for business, but those are traditionally used sort of for friends that are interacting with each other. But you can see that those more business-focused tools, Zoom, Skype, Google Hangouts and Duo, Microsoft Teams, there's a lot of people using them. With Microsoft Teams, 1 in 20 people surveyed are using Microsoft Teams for video conferencing. So we're all becoming very familiar, let's say, with speaking to each other on over a video screen. And with so many of us making use of video conferencing technology, it's important to look at ways that we can make these as productive as possible. You hear about meeting fatigue, whether in person or remote, and there are many different ways that these technologies can prevent that kind of feeling and to make sure that our meetings really are generating the best ideas, the best products, and getting the best out of the people involved in them. So let's look more closely at some of these different technologies that are available for businesses to use. Possibly the most in the news this year is Zoom. It's pretty likely that you've heard of it. It's really, really easy to get set up with Zoom, which might be why, one of the reasons at least, why it's so very popular. You can use it for free to make calls for upwards of 100 people for 40 minutes at a time. If you go over that, often Zoom will give you a free gift with a little bit extra, but if not, your subscriptions start at $14.99 per user per month, and you don't necessarily need to give everyone a subscription. You just need the host to have that subscription. Now, Zoom has some great content sharing features. It's got a whiteboard. It allows you to share files through the chat as well as text, as well as the usual kind of screen sharing. However, its captioning capability is very limited. You either need to get some poor person on your team to type the captions as you speak, or you need to get a third-party service involved, which are not always free. There are also one of the reasons that Zoom has been in the news quite so often is because of the issues around privacy on Zoom that have come up several times this year. Now, earlier in the year, we heard about Zoom bombing because Zoom was essentially, because it was so easy to access, because at the time all you needed was a meeting ID, people realized how easy it was to just jump into someone else's meeting. Now that puts all sorts of things at risk, whether it's the privacy of the content that you are sharing in the meeting that gets Zoom bombed, or the privacy of the people that are in there who don't always want to see whatever it is that a Zoom bomber decides to share. Now, Zoom, of course, has addressed these problems by introducing passwords to their meetings. But it's still not quite at the level that companies like Microsoft set for their security. A competitor to Zoom is GoToMeeting, a similar price per month if you have a subscription, but there is again a free plan available. You can get 25 video feeds into your meeting. It's pretty good security on GoToMeeting. There are these customized URLs, so you don't necessarily have these generated ones, and they require a PIN to enter the meetings. There's also transcriptions available and a good range of third-party apps that you can integrate into GoToMeeting as well. It's also very easy to use. It's easy to launch and get started with it. Then there's Google Meet. So for companies that tend to use the G Suite more than Microsoft 365, Google Meet is already available to you. So your G Suite account is costing you $6-ish per month, depending on how much storage, and it's already included in that if that's the system that you're using. Now, Google have got built-in closed captioning on their meetings, as well as the chat function like you had with Zoom. And again, like GoToMeeting, you can have up to 25 participants in your meeting. So again, when you're choosing a video software technology, it's worth looking to have the meeting somewhere where your team already are, because then it makes meetings feel less like they're taking you away from your day-to-day work. And there are countless other different technologies available for video conferencing. Zoho Meetings, Skype, Amazon Chime, and then of course there are the more consumer-focused ones. There's Facebook Messenger, WhatsApp, and even things like House Party, which were incredibly popular around March and April. Well, there's so many to choose from. Why should you choose the GoSmarter Productive Meeting tool? The GoSmarter project is designed to help small businesses thrive in an age of COVID-19, when we're all working remotely, when we're having to adapt incredibly quickly to changes in the world around us. We've tried to develop these tools to be really easy for businesses to incorporate into their everyday lives. So the GoSmarter Productive Meeting tool is mostly built on top of Microsoft Teams, which is what we're using today. The highlights of Microsoft Teams over those other video conferencing technologies, firstly, are the price, the security, which is built on Microsoft's general security features. There are many, many tools within Microsoft Teams that make your actual team more productive. It integrates incredibly well with Microsoft's other products, as well as additional third-party apps. And it is very accessible. It enables many more people to be involved in your meetings through its closed captioning feature. So let's look at the nuts and bolts of Microsoft Teams. If you have Microsoft 365, if you had Office 365, which is now Microsoft 365, even if you have the lowest subscription, the Business Basic for £5 per user, then you have Teams already. If you don't have this, as you can see, it's very cheap, and there is even a free version of Teams available. Now, Teams allows 200 plus people into your meetings. You can use it for webinars, or you can use it for intimate group sort of stand-ups or huddles when you're working on your projects. It scales in both directions really well. Importantly, because it is built by Microsoft, then all of the security features of Microsoft products are available to you in Microsoft Teams. You have multi-factor authentication. There are many levels of security access that you can grant to your team. Data is encrypted in transit, and it's very difficult to gain access to a Microsoft team meeting that you've not been invited to. It's certainly not as simple as figure out what the room ID is and jump on in. So what makes Microsoft Teams a productive place to work? Well, you can think of a lot of video conferencing tools as a conference room that you take your team off to discuss whatever the subject of your meeting is. Whereas Microsoft Teams is more like a co-working space. You're having your meetings where your work already is. You can split your team into smaller groups. You can have a multitude of different groups on Teams, all chatting about their own subjects. So they're not bothering each other with stuff until they're ready to. So you don't necessarily need to know what the marketing team are talking about if you're on the dev team, but it's very easy to come together if you need to. You can share content very easily on Microsoft Teams, whether you're sharing your screen, sharing files, or working together on a group wiki. And it automatically generates recordings for you. At the click of a button, you can have a recording of your meeting saved for later. And this integration is an important part of Microsoft Teams. When you hit that button to record your meeting, it goes straight up to Microsoft Stream, which is like a fancy elite YouTube for your business, where a transcription is automatically generated. So if you, like I said earlier, miss a meeting with your team, you don't need to ask anybody what happened. It just is available for you to look at. And you can even search through the transcripts of previous meetings to know what people are talking about. Think how much easier this makes training if you only need to deliver training once and use that video whenever somebody wants to know how to do a task. Beyond Microsoft Teams, the GoSmarter Productivity tool introduces you to Microsoft's Video Indexer, which is a very powerful product. You upload a video to it and it extracts the topics of the video. It figures out which people are in the video. It gives you a translated transcription of the video and is able to do things like content moderation, create a highlight reel for you. It does an awful lot of processing powered by AI on your videos. And secondly, because with Teams you generally have Microsoft 365, you also have the ability to use live captioning on PowerPoint. So this leads to probably the most important part of integrating these features into your collaborative remote meetings. So this is the most important part, I think personally, of your remote meetings. The meetings are the place in your business where your team get together, see each other's faces, and have an opportunity to discuss their concerns, their ideas, to collaborate on projects. And it's a place where you would hope that everyone in your team can have their voices heard. For this reason, meetings, love them or loathe them, are where the culture of your company are, especially if you are not all together in an office anymore. This is the point where you come together, and this is the point where your team grows. So the more people you can include in your meetings, whether that's by introducing closed captioning, whether it's by making transcripts available so that if somebody misses the one meeting you have today, they still feel involved with your team, or whether you use automated translation so that you can open your business up internationally. The more accessible your meetings are, the stronger the foundation of your company's culture is. And working internationally is an important thing, especially for everybody really, but especially at a time when perhaps our opportunities are limited within our own country. The 2017 annual business survey conducted by the Office for National Statistics found that 14% of businesses in Great Britain's non-financial economy were trading internationally. So there's an awful lot of businesses in Great Britain and elsewhere as well that want to reach out, and there's a great number of barriers to that, but one of them is language, and it shouldn't be, because we can use these tools to remove those language barriers and communicate with each other to start opening up our business globally. So I've shown you a small demo now of the PowerPoint feature. I now just want to very briefly show you Video Indexer, because I've talked about how great it is, but I've not actually shown you. So I will briefly stop sharing while I switch to a different screen share to show you Video Indexer. So Video Indexer, you upload a video to it and it immediately starts to create all these different insights about that video. So this is kind of a demo video that I put up. It's an overview of the Microsoft AI School. If you move through the video, you can see that it has recognized different people, and it can see where they are in the video as well. So they can say this person appears at this point. The timeline has a transcription that's been generated by Video Indexer as well. And there's a whole bunch of other insights as well. It finds labels within the videos, so it can see that there's a person, a display, a screenshot. It finds named entities in there, such as brands and locations, and it can even detect the emotions in the video. Now, Video Indexer is something that usually you have to upload videos to directly, but with automation, thanks to the GoSmarter tool, it can integrate with through Azure Logic Apps with OneDrive. So I have a system here where I upload my video into my OneDrive folder, and it generates immediately a transcript both in English and in French by calling Video Indexer and getting that back. So that's Video Indexer. Video Teams is something you're using right now, but it's very, there's a lot of different features on Teams to take advantage of. So I do recommend everybody kind of playing around a little bit to see what they can do. And there are new features being introduced to Microsoft Teams all the time. The latest one includes this fantastic together mode, which you can see in this image here, which makes you all feel like you're sat together in an auditorium, even if you are all in your separate rooms. It's also changed around some of the layout to make it easier to see people's faces. And a really useful new feature that's being rolled out at the moment is this kind of pop-out window for your meetings, so that you can easily access your meeting notes tab as well. So it's worth keeping an eye on the different developments in Microsoft Teams, because there are so many new features being rolled out all of the time. So what is next for the GoSmarter webinars? There is one more webinar coming in this series. It will be at the same time next week, and it is all about invoice processing, something that all of us have to do, and is maybe for many of us a very repetitive task. You know, read your invoice, get the details out of it, upload the invoice. Anything that we can do to automate that process is going to save us an awful lot of time. You will be able to view this webinar again on our blog shortly, and you can see all of our previous webinars at blog.nightingalehq.ai. To sign up for next week's one, you want nightingalehq.eventbrite.com. If anyone has a question, feel free to pop it into the Q&A box on the right. If not, you can always email us, mia@nightingalehq.ai, and I'm happy to answer any questions you have now or after the webinar as well. In the meantime, I'd like to say thank you very much for joining us today, and good luck with your remote meetings. May they be as productive as you can make them. Thank you.